Have you always wondered how to do this scallop stitch? Hey guys, I'm Tammy and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to create this really pretty detail super easily. I'll also show you how to adjust the width and the length to create different styles. Thank you to Brother for sponsoring today's video. So I've got the Brother Innovis VQ4 sewing machine right behind me and it's such a gorgeous machine. I'm not gonna lie, when I first saw how many stitches are included in this sewing machine, I definitely felt quite intimidated. So I thought, why not try one of them out today and help you understand exactly how to use the scallop stitch too. So right here on my sewing machine, I have this really big digital display, and this is where it has the entire stitch library. So I can see all the stitches this machine has. You can just see there's literally so many of them. And there's also just so many decorative stitches. And if you can see right here, this is the scallop stitch right there. You can see it's like a half moon. There's also one right next to it that has a slightly different detail, but personally I prefer this one right here. The cool thing about this machine is this right here is the exact live scale it will be when you sew it, so you can actually compare what it will look like before you stitch anything. It also tells me up here I need to change my presser foot to the N1, which I'll do, but I wanted to focus around down here because this you can actually play with and change how wide or long your stitch actually looks. For this first example, I'm just going to use a stand length and width that's already chosen, so it will look like this, and then I'll go ahead and show you what it will look like when we play with these. So first things first, it told me to change my presser foot to this one, which is the letter N, so I'll go ahead and do that really simply. For me, I just have to lift the presser foot up and then literally just release it and put the new one on. So that was really simple. Now I'm just going to demonstrate how to sew the scallop stitch using some really simple, easy cotton fabric, because it's definitely simpler to handle and less prone to fraying. You definitely want to use a fabric that doesn't fray too much, because when you cut the edge, you want to make sure that it's not going to fray as much as possible. So I've got 2 layers of cotton right here, but you can also just use one. So I'm just going to put my fabric under the machine like that. Now it's up to you where you sew the scallop stitch. Right now I'm just going to do a random line across the fabric. If you wanted to do it in a very specific place, you can actually draw a line with a ruler and align that up with the edge of the needle so you'll know you're following the correct line. And now I'm just going to go ahead and press my foot down and sew the stitch. So I've gone ahead and sewn that stitch, and this is what it looks like from the right side, and the wrong side looks like this. Now what we're going to do is actually cut really close to this scallop stitched edge so we can get that nice detail. It's totally up to you, you don't have to do that. You can just do the stitch across your fabric as a decorative stitch, but I'm actually going to cut the edge close so you could use it on edging. So I've got a pair of scissors right here. You could use some smaller ones, but you basically want to cut around the shape without actually going into the stitches. So now I've actually cut it really close to the edge. That is what that looks like. You definitely want to use a nice pair of sharp scissors to get really close. If I had smaller ones, I definitely would do that, but those are the sharpest pair that I have. So you can see I've gone really close into the edge. You could definitely go a bit closer. You just want to make sure you definitely don't cut into the stitching. Now that's actually ready to use for however edging you want. If you are worried about the edging fraying, you can use things like fray check to help prevent the edges from fraying. Personally, I don't feel like I need to do fray check because I think it's going to add a nice detail exactly like that. And sometimes when you do use fray check, it can actually distort the fabric color. So be wary of that and test it on fabric beforehand. So now I'm going to show you how you can actually adjust the width and the length of the stitch to create different designs. So right here you can see this is the original stitch and what that looks like in the scallop one. I can play around with these two numbers to see what it looks like. So I can make the width bigger by pressing this button, and you can see the stitch is going to be wider. I can also play around with the length, so I can make it shorter by pressing this button, and you can see it's much shorter and it's going to be more dense, which is actually quite nice if you want kind of a thicker stitch look. Or you can play around with the length and actually make it much longer so it's a bit more of a wave. So let me show you what that looks like. Let's do one of these ones so you can see the difference. So right here you can see that is what the new stitching looks like. You can see this one is so much more dense, and I actually really like how that looks. And you can see obviously the stitch length is much shorter. This one I played around with the stitch length being longer and keeping the same width as the original. So if I put the original right next to it, you can see how they differ and what playing around with the stitch length and the width actually does to the stitches. You can definitely play around with this and create some really fun details. And this is all just using one single stitch on this sewing machine. So I recently have been playing around with the scallop stitch on a sewing pattern that I'm working on, and this is what it looks like, and I absolutely love how it turned out. You can see I did the scallop stitch down the neckline and then also around the arms as well. I've got the garment here in front of me as well to show you what it looks like in person, but you can just see here I've got the scallop stitch detail all the way down the neckline, and then at the sleeves you can see I've also done the scallop stitch around the entire circumference of the sleeve at the front and the back on both of them. I wanted to play around with like a double scallop stitch detail, and I really like how that turned out. So that is how to sew a scallop stitch, and different ways you can adjust the width and the length to create a different look. It's actually so much easier than you think to do, and like I said, you don't always have to do it at the edges of things. You can do it on just main big sheets of fabric to create different details. I think that works really well as well. So whether you're new to sewing or you're looking for a machine upgrade, I definitely recommend looking at the range of Brother machines, because honestly they're my favorite brand and I just love how easy and simple they are to use. I'll leave a link down below so you can explore their range of machines. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.